Okay, I wanted to do a quick little video here. I want to explain a few things. First of all, I want to let you guys know that I'm no professional at a sawmill whatsoever. I'm amateur at best. I never really had a sawmill, never ran a sawmill, never had anything to do with it. I'm still kind of figuring things out as I go along. With that said, I've started out with my sawmill with kind of softwoods, pine I started with, and then I kind of worked my way through some oak and some maple, and I'm cutting cherry is my latest project I've been cutting. One of the things that I didn't realize, and maybe somebody else doesn't realize, maybe I can give you a leg up here, but when you're cutting the softwood, I thought the blade would need more lube because of the sap and the sticky, gooey stuff that you have when you're dealing with pine. And I figured you're going to need more lubricant there and a little bit of soap and water, run the blade with that and everything. To be honest with you, I found that with pine, I only needed maybe, a steady drip on the blade was enough to lube the blade and clean the blade, and I had no trouble. Now with the harder wood, with oak, with cherry, I found that you almost need a steady stream of water on that blade all times. If you don't run a stream, when you run a stream, you get kind of like a slurry there where the sawdust gets wet and you can see it leaves like a slush on the wood when you're cutting it. But when it dries, you're going to plane it down and it'll be gone anyway. What happens though is if you don't run enough lube, the sawdust gets on the saw blade and the saw blade heats up. And if the saw blade heats up, you're going to do a couple different things. You're going to ruin the temper on the saw blade, and you also have, well, I'll show you one of my saw blades that I had when I started cutting that first log of cherry I was cutting. The last couple of videos I had, one of you actually commented about how the blade seemed dull when I was cutting, the outside first couple cuts off of the log to make the cant. And the blade actually wasn't really dull. It was actually a new blade. I had only cut, it might have been 1 or 2 logs before this log, so I cut a little bit with it, but it wasn't enough to really dull the blade. But what happened was, I started out with a nice stream of lube in the video. You can watch it and you can see where I checked it and I saw the lube was coming out and everything was running good. And what happens is, with the gravity feed of that lube system, and I'll show you that in a little bit here too, it just feeds off the tank at the top. It comes down through a tube and goes down to the tip of the nozzle where it drips onto the blade. And for some reason, it seems like as the level goes down, the pressure gets a little less and the stream slows down a little bit, and the water has a little bit of trouble getting down to the saw blade. And I think a little bit of the slurry from the sawdust coming through might have came into the tip of the nozzle and clogged it up. But either way, one way or the other, for some reason, my lube had stopped running, and I didn't realize it. So all that slush and that slurry, the sawdust and the lube, dried out, and the blade got hot, and it baked the sawdust onto the saw blade. And once it cakes on there and it bakes onto that saw blade, it caused a lot of havoc there. You can see in the video it dulled out there, and I wanted to get through just making the cant with the saw blade that I had on there, so I kept going, and I did manage to get the cant out of it. But the last cut that I made, the last couple feet there, you could definitely tell that the blade was gummed up and messed up. And I'm going to try to clean the blade up and see if I can take and go over it and see if I sharpen it up and make sure and see how it goes. I don't know if that blade's gonna be any good or not. I might have overheated that blade. It might not be any good now. But just kind of a heads up, if you're gonna try to cut hardwood with either a Harbor Freight sawmill or one of these woodland mills or another brand that's similar, where it's a manual sawmill, small, I think mine's 9-horse motor on it. Doesn't really have all the extra power and all the extra force to get through that log. Cutting the hardwoods is kind of tough on these saws. I think they're a little underpowered, but at the same time, it does cut good. When you put a new blade on it and you have a lube running good, I cut no problem, and I managed to cut all kinds of hardwood without any issue. So I just wanted to give you a heads up on where I'm at, what I'm learning as I go, and it might help one of you guys out. So I want to just tell you now, thanks for watching the videos, and I'll show you a little clip here of the saw blade out of the sawmill. Okay, so here's the saw blade, and you can see, get the camera to focus here a little bit, you see how gummed up it is, and it gets like tar on there. It's actually where, it's tough to get off of there. Now this will come off. I just have to get a little bit of some cleaning detergent or a little bit of gasoline on a rag and wipe it across there, and it'll come right off. But when it builds up like that, you can see that it's all down through the saw blade, and it just causes havoc with the cut. Now this saw blade is fairly new. I think I only cut a couple logs with it, but like I said, I didn't realize that the lube had stopped, and that's what ends up happening with it. It gets all built up on there just from the cutting the wood. So I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of a show on that. They wanted to know, a couple people wanted to know why you need to run some kind of lubricant on your saw blade when you're cutting, and it's just to stop this buildup like this. I'll show you on the sawmill here. My reservoir is up there, and all it is, it runs through a line on the other side here. Runs through this line. Here's where I adjust it on this screw here. I just adjust that thumb screw to get the right flow rate, and it comes down through a tube, and it comes over, and there's a shut-off valve here that I shut off when I'm not running it, and turn it on when I'm running, and it comes down through here, and runs right into the saw there. It comes out on the other side here. You can see it's just a copper tube here. A little bit of buildup on it from running it today, but it just drips down on the edge of the blade, and you can see when it's working right, it keeps the blade fairly clean. A little bit of dust there dropped on it, but the blade itself is real clean. So that's the whole idea with the lubricant, having the lube on there, a little bit of water and a little bit of soap on there to keep that buildup off the blade.